book. So if you look at that 1923 to now, that means that the book is 100 years old. All right. Again, for the benefit of those of you who are listening to this on Instagram and on the podcast, the title of this episode of the Portfolio Podcast is a book review. I will be reviewing the book Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins. The book was written in 1923. And if you do the maths right now, that means that the book is 100 years old. And the fascinating thing about that book is that the concepts and the principles of that book are still very much relevant and germane in our today's world. The concepts and the ideas of that book are still extremely relevant and germane to our today's world. So now let's get into it, and we'll come out to some of the highlights and I'll explain it as I go. In fact, the great David Ogilvy, the founder of Ogilvy and Mather, one of the greatest advertising companies in the world, he actually said that nobody has a right to get into advertising if they've not read Scientific Advertising about 7 to 8 times, because it's such a phenomenal book. So let's get into some of the concepts of the book. The first concept of the book that I thought was interesting is, it said that advertising is salesmanship. It said its principles are the principles of salesmanship. Successes and failures in both lines are due to like causes. It's powerful. In fact, there's a line in the book. He said that advertising is salesmanship in print. And in today's day and world, in those days, only big companies that does advertising. But now you can do your own ads, and we call it even content marketing. So you look at it this way. It says that your content is your salesman or woman in print. He says that the thing that makes a content to be successful and what makes a content not to be successful is the same thing that makes a salesperson to be successful, a physical salesperson in front of you, and it's the same thing that makes a physical salesperson in front of you not to be successful at the same time. He said that the purpose of advertising is not just to put your name out there. He said that the purpose of advertising is to make sales. I thought that was brilliant. He said the purpose of advertising is to make sales. He said that, so therefore you must justify everything that you do there. In fact, he has a word for it. He said advertising is multiplied salesmanship. And that's so true, because if you have one-on-one salespeople, there is a limit to the number of people that your salespeople can talk to, really. There's a limit to how many people your salespeople can talk to. But if you have great content or great adverts, that great advert can reach out to a lot of people. So your salespeople can do one-on-one sales for you, but your content and your advert can do one-to-many sales for you. So really, your content and advertising is a leveraged salesperson. Your content and ad is a leveraged salesperson. So you have leveraged your content and your ad, for that. And before I go any further, this episode of the Portfolio Podcast is powered by Veritas. Veritas is one of the fastest growing real estate development companies in Africa. All right, I'm going to leave a link in the show notes. You can click on the link and check them out. The second sponsor of this episode of the Portfolio Podcast is me. All right, so I just designed one of my online courses called How to Sell Anything to Anyone. It is a 6-hour sales training on how to sell anything to anyone. It's a specific guide, and you will get a certificate if you sign up for that. So if you click on the link on my bio, or you click on the link on the show note of the podcast, you can buy that. It's £24 if you live in the UK. I think it's about $23 if you live in America. And if you live in Nigeria, it is 30,000 naira. So click on the link on the show notes or on the link on my Instagram bio to get the online course. So let's continue from what he said. There is a line there that he said that I was so powerful, and I really, really liked it. When he was talking about, researching your customers. That you must put yourself in your customers' shoes. Remember, this thing was spoken about years ago. Is it not today we're talking about customer avatar? customer persona. He said you must put yourself in the shoes of the customer and truly study the life of your customer, because it says that is the only way that you can sell well. I mean, David Ogilvy, this is David Ogilvy's book, the David Ogilvy on market, on advertising. Great man. He was the one that said that everybody should read the Claude Hopkins book up to 8 times if you want to get into advertising. When he was given the brief to write an advertisement for Rolls Royce, the luxury car Rolls Royce, here is what he said, and I thought that was very powerful. Here's what he said. He said, first, study the product that you are going to advertise. He says that the more you know about the product, the more likely you will come up with a big idea for selling it. He said that when I got the Rolls Royce account, I spent 3 weeks reading about the car and came across a statement that at 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise comes from the electric clock. And that was the slogan that they used to sell the car. He spent how many weeks? 3 weeks. He went to the library of Rolls Royce. He was studying the product. He spent 3 weeks studying the product and studying the people that will buy the product. And in the course of the study, he stumbled into a powerful statement that says that at 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in this new Rolls Royce comes from the electric clock. And that was what sold the car. The advert ran for years and made Rolls Royce a lot of money. That's why the guy said that the genius is in taking pain. Said that the advertising man who spares the midnight oil will never go far. In other words, you that is a content creator, you that runs your business, that if you don't study the customer, if you spare the midnight oil, that is his own way of saying studying the customer. He says that you will not go far if you do that. So are you studying the customer? Do you do like a research on your customer? Do you do like a poll for your customer to know what their pain points are, and in the course of their pain points and sell a product to them? Because at the end of the day, human beings are selfish. People don't buy products because of you. They only buy product because of the pain that they have in their lives, and then they believe that your product or your service can satisfy that pain. It is only about self-interest. Did you get that? All right. So here's what. Yes, there's something else that he said here. He said that some people say that be very brief. People will read but little. Would you say that to a salesman with a prospect standing before him? Would you confine him to any certain number of words? That would be an unthinkable handicap. So what he's saying here is that when you are writing your content, when you are writing your ad, his line here, his argument here is that the more you write, the more you sell. That the more words you put in your sales copy, the more words you put in your content in describing your product. To sell more, say more. In other words, he said that the more words in describing your product or your service, the higher the probability that you would sell your product and your service. I thought that was really powerful, because his argument was that, think about it, if a customer is right in front of you and you want to sell him or her your product or your service, will you be as brief as possible so you can walk out of that? He says no. He said when you're in front of a customer, you will tell the customer about what your product can do. You will tell the customer about who your product has helped. You will tell the customer about who is currently using your product. You will tell the customer about the warranty and the guarantees of your product. He said you will explain everything about the product. He said, but when you are writing your content, when you are writing your advertising, why do you want to be brief? He said the more you tell, the more you sell. And I thought that was very powerful. That's why when I write content, when I write adverts, I realize that the more I write about the product, the more sales I make. The more I write about the product, the more sales I make. Guys, I hope you're enjoying it. Those of you watching this on Instagram, if you're enjoying this, tap the like button, give me some emojis, buy a badge if you think this was good. This is good to you. So this is very powerful. This is very powerful. I hope this is being useful to each and every each and every one of you. All right. Yeah. So there's so many great stuff in this book here. Next, he said figures which do not lie tell one at once the merits of an ad. He was talking about figures here. He said that when you are writing your headline, right? He said if you want to use figures, he said you should quote specific figures. Don't just say a lot of people are using my product. So instead of that, you should use something specific, like 52% of entrepreneurs in Lagos are using this software for their accounting. That is more specific. He says that is more compelling than something else. Then he spoke about headline. He said the headline is the most important part of your advertising, or in our today's world, of your content. He said that people only read what is interesting to them. That is the only thing. He gave an example. He said if you're in a party, for example, and you guys are having a good time, and the glasses are clanking with each other, conversations are going on. He said no matter how noisy that place is, he says if you hear your name, you will turn your head to see who is calling you. True or false? You turn your head to find out who is the person that is calling you. He said that is the job of your headline or your caption. That the purpose of your caption or the purpose of your headline is to call out the problems of customers, or is to call out the target audience that you want to buy your product or that you want to buy your services. Did you get that? He said that that's the purpose, and that is so true. People don't really care about you. You are not the important part of the equation. Because like the great Zig Ziglar put it, he said that he said that if you can help people get what they want, they will help you get what you want. I thought that was powerful. He said if you can help people get what they want, they will help you get what you want. So you want to call out people in your caption. You want to call out people in your headline, because when you call out a people group or you call out a problem that people are going through, you get their attention. Because like Robert Collier says that you must always join the conversation that is already taking place in the mind of the customer. So let's say, for example, there are certain conversations taking place in your mind right now as we speak. For some of you, your conversation taking place in your mind is, how am I going to pay my rent? Some of you, the conversation taking place predominantly in your mind is, how am I going to get married to this guy? Some of you, the conversation taking place in your heart is, how am I going to buy a dress for that wedding? For some of you, how am I going to pay my children's school fees? For some of you, the conversation, how am I going to buy a flight ticket to travel? So here's what the guy says. He said that if your headline speaks to the problems that people are going through, guess what is going to happen? You will get their attention. You get that, and you see why the first point I spoke about, you researching the customer, is so important. Because if you research your customers very, very well, and you know what their pain points are, and you know what their problems are, you will speak to the problem from the caption or the headline. If you get them at the caption and you get them at the headline, they will pay attention to you. They will only pay attention to you when you are speaking to their needs or you are speaking to their wants. That's why Gary Vee calls it the attention economy. And you can only get my attention, and I can only get your attention, if what I am talking about is something you want to accomplish or a burden in your heart. That's just the truth of the matter. Once you come from that premise that this business is not about me, it's about the customer, I'm telling you, then you will profit as much as you want to profit. It's counterintuitive, but a lot of people think that when they talk about themselves, then they will sell more. No way. When you focus on the customer's needs, when you focus on the customer's wants, that's it. That's it. There's a line that he said in the book that was so powerful. He said, people will not be bored in print in our age. Remember, the book is 100 years old now. He said people will not be bored in print. So in our age, we can say people will not be bored on screen, which is your phone now. They will not be bored on screen. He said that they may listen politely at a dinner table to boast and personalities life histories, etc. He said, but in print, they choose their companions and their subjects. They choose their own companions and their subjects. They want to be amused and benefited. Oh my God, I thought that was powerful. I thought that was so powerful. He said you cannot bore people on the screen. You cannot bore people on print. Because if somebody's in front of you, talking about a product, talking about something, maybe you're in a church or in a meeting, out of courtesy and respect, you may not walk out on the person. But if you're on your phone and you're scrolling, if what the person is saying does not make sense to you, will you keep scrolling? The answer is a big no. You will move on. You will not keep scrolling, because on your screen, on your smartphone, you choose and you decide who to spend time with. And who you spend time with is a function or a product of the person that is talking about your needs and your wants. So the question is, who are you? How are customers going to spend time with you? That's why I tell people all the time, putting images of, what you ate last night, where you traveled to, they're important. But hey, I don't think people really, really care about those things. So I don't really think so. Nah. Unless maybe you're a celebrity. The question in their heart is, what can you do for me and how can you benefit me? That's the only question in their heart. All right. That's the only question in their heart. All right. One more thing. Yeah. It was talking about reading. That if you are in a content creator or you're in advertising, you must study. He said this writer has a complete, that's what he said. He said the library of an advertising agency should have books on every line that calls for research. He said a painstaking advertising man will often read for weeks on some problem. You read for weeks. Did you hear what the guy saying? This book writing in the 1900. This book is 100 years old. He said a consulting man. He said a salesman. He said a content creator. He said an entrepreneur, because right now you are also creating your own advert. He said you should have a rich library to understand your customers, to understand their pain points. You can only solve a problem that you have a perspective about. The question I want to ask you is, do you know the problems that your customers are going through? Are you a student? Are you a student of the pains and the challenges of your customers? Here's what he said here. He said that this writer has just completed an enormous amount of reading, medical and otherwise, on coffee. This is to advertise a coffee without caffeine. So he was giving a brief for a coffee company in America to run their ads for them. He spent weeks reading about coffee. Some of you that engage people to run your Facebook ads for you, check them out. They don't even read about your business. They don't even read about your industry. They don't even have a library. Little wonder why your ads are not converting. Little wonder why your content is not converting, because the people that are supposed to focus on all of that stuff for you are not focused on it. Before I go any further, remember this episode of the Paul Phil podcast was powered by Veritasi Homes. Veritas is one of the fastest growing real estate development companies in Nigeria and in Africa. You can click on the link on my show notes of the podcast to read about them and maybe buy a property from them. They're so good. And the second sponsor of this episode of the Paul Phil podcast is my product. It's my online course called Sell Anything to Anyone. I've done a 3 weeks sales course before, and I turned into an online course, and it's 6 hours of really deep dive, specifically how to sell anything to anyone. The first module is on mindset, the second module is on marketing, the third module is on sales, but it's 6 hours of deep work and a lot of case studies. If you buy it, you're going to get a certificate from me, because my company is registered both in the UK and in Nigeria, Sales Factory. So click on the link. It's £24 for the online course, or 30,000 naira if you're in Nigeria for the online course. So how many of you would like to get that course? So I mean, this is such a fascinating book. It's not a big book, but it is such a fascinating book. I want to encourage you guys to read as we begin to wrap it up here. I've read a lot this year. I read a lot, and this is a very good year of reading for me, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I use Readwise to take notes on the things that I'll share with you the last thing, and then we'll call this for the YouTube as a wrap. He was talking about, you must put a call to action in your ads or in your content. He said that they postpone, and a postponed action is too often forgotten. He said when a customer postpone their buying decision to buy your product from you, usually they forget it, and that is the truth. That is truly, truly, truly the truth. If they postpone it, they may forget it. So give them a sense of urgency. Make them buy now. And if you do that, you learn a lot. So smash the subscribe button. Those of you watching this on YouTube. All right. So my Instagrammers, thank you so much. What did you learn today? How many of you would like to get the online course? Say I.